The Sciforror Film Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another extra episode of the Sciforror Film Podcast, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by actor Laurence Harvey. Hello, Laurence. Thank you for joining us.
Laurence R. Harvey. Remember.
Laurence R. Harvey. Sorry. Yes.
Laurence Harvey is room at the top, and
Yes, of course.
Darling.
Laurence R. Harvey. Have to remember that. Okay. Thank you for being on the show. It's really good to have you on here.
It's nice to be here. Nice to chat with you.
Good. Right, so I normally start off with a straightforward question, which is like, how did you get into acting and films, and more specifically, how did you end up doing so much in the way of horror stuff?
Okay, well, I basically my granddad worked on my mother's side. He worked at the printers for the Liverpool Echo, and so I was getting comics before I could read. So I was getting, like, when Marvel started in 1971, and it was I was getting them, and I couldn't read them, but I was sort of consuming them, and so I've always been into comics. And then I sort of got I became in my sort of like teens, I sort of became a big kind of fan of, big film fan. Obviously, I was the right age for when Star Wars came out, and Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger I saw at the cinema and stuff, and Close Encounters, and it was like, so I was just kind of addicted to seeing films, going to the movies, and also I think, like a lot of the techniques in comics narrative, the construction of comics is very similar to film kind of thing, and they're both narrative, and they're both visual and narrative kind of ways of telling stories. So so by the time I was going to university, I was sort of doing a lot of, I was based in fine art, basically, and I was thinking of, should I do an illustration course and try and get comics, or do I do a fine art course where I can move from painting into filmmaking?
Right.
So I ended up doing a fine art course, and then within like the first couple of weeks, there was using a kind of film course, and I found I was completely inept at using a camera, but still interested in film and using narrative and images. So I sort of became involved with the performance art, because we had painting, printmaking, sculpture, and then a fourth area, which was performance art, film, video, and sound arts.
Right.
All time-based arts, basically. So from then I started doing sort of performance art stuff, and then was working with Stephen Taylor Woodrow on some of his stuff outside of college, and him and Peter Cox started doing characters for children's TV, and this was a time where there was a lot of people from the performance art background going into kids TV, like Ragdoll used a lot of people like Gary Stevens and so on, in Teletubbies and Rosie and Jim and stuff. And then Stephen and Peter were getting involved with Saturday morning shows out of Maidstone. So I started doing odd little characters on What's Up Doc, yeah, What's Up Doc, and then sort of did a character called Little Green Man on BBC for Parallel 9, and then got an agent off the back of that, and then decided I ought to do some acting courses at the City Lit, and then was doing and ended up doing theatre whilst I was in London as well. So I sort of went about things backwards in a way. So yeah.
But I mean, looking at your film career, you have done an awful lot of horror films. Was it something that you kind of were drawn to when you were younger, or is it something you just kind of like drifted into?
I mean, it was always, I was always interested in like fantasy and science fiction and horror. Because Starburst came out around the same time as Star Wars and
Yeah,
stuff. And then I remember, living through the Video Nasties era and Fangoria being available and there being questions asked in Parliament about Fangoria. And that, to me, it was always, horror was always about the makeup effects and what went into that, as well as the sort of narrative of building up tension and so on.
yeah,
So, I was always kind of, you know, and growing up in the 70s, it's that kind of hiding behind the couch at the monsters of Doctor Who. And the most interesting part of Star Wars was the cantina scene where you get all these aliens, even though you just glimpse them for a second. And so,
yeah,
and that kind of strange imagery in that as well, that's kind of interesting. So, it wasn't like I deliberately set out to do horror. It was just that when I went for the audition, I was up for Human Centipede 2. That's what I was kind of riffing on. So yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, you touched on like Video Nasties and things. The Human Centipede is one of these sort of Marmite films where people either love it or hate it.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
That,
the first film was like that, and then so all the others are like that too, but in different ways. Because you'll find that some people like 3
mm,
because it's a comedy and it's more mainstream looking, whereas other people prefer 2 because it feels grungier and more underground, and more traditional extreme cinema kind of thing.
yeah.
So
I mean, I'm not going to dwell on them too far because they're only a small part of your career, but they are something that a lot of people seem to know about. But yeah, I think I was confused about because I must admit I've seen the first one, I've seen half of the second one, and I honestly didn't want to watch anymore. And I've never seen the third. But the thing I was a little bit, it confused me. And I was interested in is the fact that you're in the second one and you're also in the third one, but in the third one you play a completely different character.
well, like at the beginning of the second film, the characters watching the first film, and at the beginning of the third film, the 2 characters, Bill Boss and Dwight Butler, are watching the
The
second film,
second, yeah,
and obviously, at the end of so each film starts with the end of the previous film, but it's characters watching it. So it's each one's a meta.
yeah,
The previous film is a film within the universe of the next one. So
yeah, yeah. Okay, fair enough. I've got to say that.
that's why Dieter plays a different character in part 3 as well. So
Yeah, and it confused me. Not having seen the film, I was a little confused by that, but I completely understand what you're saying now.
if you don't feel you can get through part 2, give part 3 a go. It is more of a comedy than
Okay,
the others. So
I've got to say that the first, well, apart from Human Centipede 2, or the first full film of yours that I watched myself was Frankenstein Created Bikers, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. It was a
yeah,
brilliant
yeah, yeah.
film.
Well, I really liked Dear God No, and so I got to know those guys when I was doing conventions in America off the back of Human Centipede 2.
I,
Yeah,
I, I love that film. I thought it was such a brilliant film. It's so funny and great effects and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, there was a lot of like pseudo grindhouse films out at the time, but that kind of the Dear God No and Frankenstein Created Bikers do have a genuine feel of grindhouse, because I think James Bickett is such an aficionado of that kind of era of
Yeah,
film, and also because of the way it was made, it was Frankenstein Created Bikers. We were using end of reel film that was film stock that was left over from shooting The Walking Dead in Atlanta. So
oh right.
the camera guy who on Frankenstein Creature Bikers worked on The Walking Dead, so he
Oh,
had all this film that was 35 millimeter film, which is why it's such a I mean the Dear God No was shot on 16 millimeter, I think, but yeah, we shot all of Frankenstein Created Bikers on 35
it
because of it was leftover
it
stock.
does it does have a kind of, it has that look of a kind of 80s sort of film about it.
Yeah, yeah, or late 70s, early 80s, yeah.
Yeah.
And like I love the my death scene. Spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the film. He does that very sort of 70s trick of it being a freeze frame.
Yeah.
You hear the music going over the top of it and stuff, and I sort of really liked that. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's really good. I saw you and met you at the latest Romford Horror Film Festival,
Yes.
where I had the pleasure of seeing you in two films, Black Chariot and Spoiling You.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
how did you get involved with the new films that are being made at the British Studio?
Uh, well, I mean, with Laurie Brewster and Hex Media, and now the umbrella organization is the British Horror Studio. I'd worked with Mark Logan on a short film of his called Rats, and then he was one of the people invited to do a segment for an anthology film that Hex Media were putting together. They reached out to people they knew and asked other people to do segments for this anthology film for We Are Many, which was the theme of demons, and they wanted as many different types of story and approaches as possible. So hence they reached out to other people, and I was in Mark's segment of that, and um, and also I'd sort of met Laurie a few times as well at various places, and the idea was always to. Laurie kept saying, "Oh, we should come up and do something," and then I can't remember what was the first thing. I think like I came back to do yeah, I think Black Chariot was the first one we shot scenes for. But that same week they before doing Black Chariot, I shot some scenes for We Are Many 2, which is a kind of Lovecraftian uh take on the first film. So it's an anthology of Lovecraft style
Okay,
creatures, which will be out later this year. I think it might be at the next Romford. Romford.
okay,
Um, but yeah, you'd have to check. But it is out later this year. Um, so shot some scenes for that, and then a couple of days doing stuff for Black Chariot, which yeah, is at Romford this year.
yeah.
And
Um,
then I think later on I was brought back for In the Grip of Terror, the Amicus film, which they released last year.
yeah.
And then we also shot scenes for Spoiling You
Well,
at the same
I
time.
mean, they are very different films, and your characters are very different characters in those two films.
Yes, yeah.
Uh, um, I gotta say, and it's something that struck me when I was watching Black Chariot, and it's something that struck me seeing you in a few other things and as well. I am struck by the fact that your character in Black Chariot and the way you play that part and your look in a lot of things, it kind of reminds me a lot of Peter Lorre.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm surprised that nobody has kind of like done I don't know, a remake or something of some of the older horror films where Peter Lorre was in with you in that part, because I think you would be
Yeah.
ideal for that sort of role.
I'd love to do M, Murderer Walks Among Us.
Yeah. So I mean, have you had that before? Have people said that? Do you think like
Yeah, it's been remarked, like especially when Human Centipede 2 came out, because it's in black and white. People just look for uh similar things. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd love to do a remake of a Peter Lorre film or something. Yeah.
yeah, I think it would work really, really well. But the character you played in Spoiling You is very different from basically anything. It's quite an extreme character in a lot of ways. Did it take a lot out of you playing that part? Because I mean, you were in some parts of it, you were in a suit sort of thing, and it was
Yeah. The cat suit was was boiling.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so we had to do like quick takes and then have a bit of air and get back into it and do another take. Yeah, so but yeah,
and at Romford, Laurie and Megan were saying that they were looking at making a sequel to that.
yes,
Are
yeah.
you involved in that?
They mentioned bringing me back for it, so yeah, we'll wait and see. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't count on anything until it actually happens. So, yeah, but it's a great idea. I think.
Yeah, it was very different. I I must admit, of the three films I saw from the studio at Romford, that was my favourite one. Spoiling you, I think it was my favourite of them because it was so different, such a different sort of film.
Yeah, I like that whole ASMR and the I mean it's about fandom in the same way that Human Centipede 2 is about fandom, but dealt with in a more kind of in a very different way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, have you got other films that you're working on at the moment, or that you know that are going to be out in the next sort of year or so?
Well, I mean, what's the things that have just come out are uh, VHS Underground, which was on a festival in Paris, the Sadiq Master Festival, and that's coming out on Uncut TV, which is it's a DVD and Blu-ray label in Germany. It's a German film, and Final Pill, which is having its premiere at Hull Truck Theatre on the 3rd of May.
Okay.
And that's I saw a short film called the short film version of this at a film festival in Hull last October, November time. And then when Caelan, who I met when I was up in Hull that time, he got in touch and asked if I'd be one of the characters. The, the film is basically a couple arguing on the eve of the end of the world kind of thing.
Right.
And then other characters come into that, but it's mainly a two-hander. But I play a neighbour that comes around because of all the noise. Because yeah. So yeah, that's just a small role. And in VHS Underground, I'm in the wraparound. It's an anthology film. I'm in the wraparound.
Okay.
Obviously, Black Chariot and Spoiling You, I think, are going to other places too. Again, from Hex Media, The Slave and the General, the
Yeah.
Sword and Sorcery uh, film. It's a follow-up to the Sword, the the Slave and the Sorcerer, I think.
Yeah, I interviewed Bryony Monroe
Right, yeah.
yeah, a little while ago, and she was talking about that. So yeah, I know that's coming up soon.
But apparently that's now going to be 2 films. The
Oh, right.
Slave and the General is going to be so there's going to be 3 films in all out of
Oh,
that.
okay.
Obviously, I wasn't in the first one, but yeah. So hopefully, I'm in both of the
Oh, that's cool.
Slave and the General ones. I shot a film in November called A Quiet Violence, which is a gangster film, which is will be out later in the year. I haven't heard much about that at the moment, but I know they're aiming to get it out by the end of the year. So,
Okay.
and yeah, and Bloodstream, which will have its premiere at Phantasmagoria Film Festival in Wrexham. Uh, Angel Lust, which is coming to Romford Festival.
Right.
It's Michael Fausti's film, which I'd previously done Burnt Flowers with him and a section in Video Shop Tales of Terror.
Yep.
I'm guessing. So yeah, Angel Lust will be at Phantasmagoria as well, but I think that's having its premiere at Romford. So.
Okay. Oh, cool. That's great. I mean, you are quite prolific. You've done a lot of films.
It's because I'm cheap.
Mm. What I'm interested in is the fact that you kind of you don't kind of, although most of the films that you've done have been horror, and you have done some sci-fi, you've done some comedy and some drama and some thrillers and things like that as well. But your film, you're not kind of like, you've never been kind of typecast. You've never been in a specific style of horror film or anything like that. You have been in a wide range of different sort of styles within the horror genre, as well as doing other stuff as well. Do you prefer doing that kind of like not doing the same type of thing too often?
Uh, yeah, but also I think it's about choosing who you work with. I mean, I like the people I work with. Like Laurie, I think it's kind of an old-fashioned kind of style. It's kind of slower than most modern movies.
Yeah.
But he's got an eye and he loves kind of acting and so on. So there's something nice and kind of old-fashioned about working with Laurie and so on. And like Mark Logan, he kind of his kind of style feels more like a kind of um, like tale, ghost tale at Christmas, ghost story at Christmas, or 70s the supernatural TV show. So it's kind of, I like those kind of older eras, and um, well, I like going against the grain of the modern era, I guess. That's what it is. But also, I like doing extreme cinema, like gory, nasty stuff as well. I don't mind, it's all because I grew up on reading Fangoria and learning about prosthetics and stuff, and I sort of love playing around with fake blood.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that has become. I mean, especially within the indie horror thing, is the fact that there is most people I've talked to have a love of that whole kind of like proper sort of effects, rather than
Oh
physical
yeah,
effects, rather than
too much reliance on CGI and stuff.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's where indie film has an advantage over Hollywood, in as much as that that we do you do get more physical effects rather than computer generated stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is there? I mean, as I say, because you've been in such a wide variety of things, is there a style of horror that you prefer, or is there one that you haven't done that you would like to do?
Well, I'd like to do more kind of science fiction like stuff, more straightforward science fiction. But
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of horror, I mean, I like a lot of analog horror that you find on YouTube and stuff. And it'd be interesting, and I know that's starting to creep into film. I mean, I know Skinnamarink kind of divided people, but I kind of absolutely love it for nailing that kind of atmosphere and type of aesthetic on screen. And I'm looking forward to seeing the back rooms.
Mm.
Um, and Exit 8 is also one of those liminal spaces, kind of.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing those. But yeah, something that's kind of more. I know a lot of people complain about sort of Skinnamarink feeling like an art installation, but to me that's great. I love it. Tsukamoto's Haze is a guy trapped in one space, and it kind of does have that kind of art installation feel, but you're also overwhelmed by that kind of claustrophobic feeling.
Yeah.
So something like that anything that's kind of like that would instantly appeal to me, I guess.
Cool. That's good. Yeah. I mean, I must admit, I find a lot of modern mainstream horror is relies too much on fast action and not enough on storytelling and atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, that's what's so great about Skinrink. It's all atmosphere and it's no gore. It's no,
Yeah.
it's just about hearing these kind of whispered voices and the kind of mood of, you're a kid and the parents are out, supposedly out for the day, you're in the house.
Exactly what you mean. Okay. Thank you very much for being on the show. It's been great to talk to you.
It's been great.
I hope to see you again at festivals or wherever around, and look forward to seeing some more of your films in the next few years and in the future.
Yeah, well, look out for Angel Lust, Bloodstream, and VHS Underground. Okay.
Definitely.
Right.
So everybody out there, keep an eye out for Laurence R. Harvey and his films. I will put links up to his social media so that you can see what he's doing in the future. And thank you for being on the show, Laurence.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody out there for watching. And we'll be back again soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
The Sciforror Film Podcast.